Okay, with Marlene Emilia Rios, Lucia and Nicole is the short film played at the Wild Film Festival. It's a 10-minute LGBTQ plus romance film. And yeah, nice job. Nice, concise 10-minute film. Got a lot of layers to it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So tell me about the process. And according to the blog interview, it's so funny because you were talking in the blog interview about how what motivated you to make the film, and you said you used to watch A Walk in the Clouds, and that was your romance film as a child. But my memory of that film is like it's kind of sad, but it's yeah, but I totally understand. And you were looking for kind of like a romance that touched you emotionally, I guess, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, A Walk in the Clouds I think is definitely like one of the sadder ones, but like, being a child watching it, I think my takeaway was kind of like, oh, this is like a beautiful, like gorgeous film to look at and like people fall in love, right? And then obviously like as I got older, we watching it back, I realized there was like a lot of depth there and a lot of like sadness there, and I kind of wanted to do like my own little version of that because obviously when she first sees her friend, like her friend is living out on the streets, and that is like a very tragic kind of reality for a lot of queer youth. So I wanted to, kind of tell that story in a way that also wasn't just like focused on that in like a very negative way and just kind of romanticize it in the legacy of like romance films.
So it says right in the beginning of the film that it's shot on Kodak film.
That's right, yeah.
So you shot it on film.
Yeah, we shot it on 16 millimeter film. I had actually gotten a grant from Kodak back in I want to say 2020 with my previous short film, We Choose to Go. So I won the grant with that and then was able to use that to then make this film.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really great. So it's the whole process because I'm old enough to remember making films like this because that's the before digital. That's how old I am. But but that's it's quite the ordeal, right? Like just from terms of like obviously processing the films, like seeing the rushes, like praying that the rushes turn out good, that everything's in focus, even like having a solid focus puller, all that stuff on set. What kind of motivated you to do it again?
I mean, I have always kind of like loved shooting on film. I grew up still like in the time when like 35 millimeter point and shoot cameras and just can't like 35 millimeter DSLRs in general, not DSLRs, SLRs, my bad.
Yeah.
Um, were like still a thing. So I like grew up kind of like very familiar with that, like stealing my parents' cameras just to like shoot photos on my own. And then went to film school and finally had the opportunity to shoot on 16 millimeter. And I just really liked that process. I like kind of how precise you have to be, but also how you have to kind of like lean more into mistakes as they happen because obviously you have a limited amount of film, so you can't just keep going for takes, right?
Yeah.
You kind of like accept the imperfections.
But you also like shot like a lot of it, from my recollection, is that it's on a handheld, right? You did a lot of handheld shots.
Yeah, the beginning is all, I want to say almost all of the beginning is handheld when they're out in the like street of Albuquerque. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like so who did who was your cinematographer? Did they shoot the film as well?
Yeah, Garrett Smith is our cinematographer, and yeah, he shot the entire film. He was our operator as well.
So that's not easy to do like do handheld on 16 millimeter either. So
Yeah, it was definitely.
I'm assuming he really loved this experience.
Oh yeah, for sure. He was definitely like on board as soon as I was like, "Oh, maybe we shoot this on 16," you know. But yeah, it was I think he had a fun time. It was really hot on the day that we shot and he was holding the camera handheld, and it was like that added a little bit of like extra kind of like sweat into the whole process, but it was still like overall just an enjoyable process.
So you shot it in one day?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. So you must have been
Yeah.
pretty organized making the film.
Was it? Sorry, I think it was actually 2 days, but I mean,
Okay.
it was all, yeah, it was all like during sunlight hours and like, it is like we did shoot it in August in Albuquerque, so we did have like the longer sunlight hours, but it was still like very much like, yeah, being organized, making sure that we knew like exactly what order we were traveling in, and we were kind of lucky that within our like locations and also in the story progression that we could just shoot everything in order.
Mm.
So that made it a little easier in terms of like keeping track of like how much footage we had to do certain scenes and things like that. But yeah.
So but you're from you live in California, but you shot in New Mexico?
Yeah, that's right. I had went to film school in New Mexico. I went to the University of New Mexico and I loved it there. It's a really beautiful state and also there's like a really welcoming community, especially there's a queer community there. There's a big like Latino and Native community out there and it's all like very intertwined.
Yeah, I just lost you there for a second. I think we're back though.
Yeah.
No, because I've talked to people to more than a few people who live in New Mexico, and they said that it's just like since like Breaking Bad, like Better Call Saul, like there's a huge kind of like that was like a big push to get this huge film community going in that state.
Yeah, for sure. When I think I graduated around the time when Marvel still had a contract out there and I think the Avengers had still was still kind of filming out there. I think they were wrapping up filming there, but that's around the time when I like finished film school there and there's definitely been like a huge embrace of like the film community and it's like right at that point where like people are still really welcoming to you filming there, but they're like definitely more conscious, I guess, kind of in the way that LA is of like what filming means now and like that means that there's going to be
Yeah.
like a huge crew in your yard and all of that.
So they're halfway to jadedness then. So
Yeah,
okay,
maybe,
because in
maybe.
because in Toronto they've been doing it for 30 years. They're full throttle jaded. They know the tricks and the trades to get money from the film crews. Every single nook and cranny of Toronto has been filmed already. But back 30,
Yeah.
like 25 years ago, so it still had that exciting vibe to it, right? So that's done now. So
Yeah, we're kind of, well, yeah, we're still at the point where we can still at least be like, oh, we're just like an indie film. Like, we promise that we don't have
yeah,
like the money to pay you, but like, we know where you're coming from.
yeah. Because then people realize that making a film is boring. Like, not
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like when you're watching it from afar, like it's pretty tedious, right? It's not like exciting to watch, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah, we actually did have like in the scene where Lucia and Nicole are walking their bicycles down the like neighborhood, there's in the background in the shot you can kind of see like the family that lives in one of the houses like came out to like watch us filming.
Yeah,
And I think they got bored like really quick because it
yeah.
was just like we were literally just there like with the bicycles and a camera and it's good, just me kind of being like, okay, now like walk this way. Can you go a little slower? Like so yeah, it just
So
wasn't like
before I get to your performances, I want to ask you about the location, the house. Where did it's like kind of has that like old fashioned but modern feel at the same time. I'm curious. It's like I love the art direction in the home. It kind of fits thematically to your film. I'm just curious where you found that location.
yeah, thank you. I actually rented it from VRBO.
Yeah.
And I told the homeowner in advance. I was like, hey, I want to make this film and I want it to be like my little like love letter to Albuquerque. If you're fine with that, like I would love to film here. And they were relatively fine with it. I unfortunately like lost kind of like their little binder and that was kind of like a little hiccup, in terms of things. They had a binder of like rules, but they were really nice, really friendly, very welcoming. And yeah, I wanted a location that looked kind of like how I remembered the childhood homes of like my grandparents and something that also felt like a little more contemporary. So I found that and felt like it was a good blend. And then we just kind of like dressed it up a little bit here and there, but it was mostly like the location was kind of like that to begin with.
So the irony is that you lost the rule book, I guess, right? You lost the rule book.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, so then like I don't know if this is like so then I'm curious about what you did the art direction because the first thing I noticed that is that there's green. There's a symbolism of green, like even the characters wearing green shirt, the walls, the cupboards are green. I think even the kettle and the kitchen is green, right? Is that just
Yeah.
like that's just the house you got? Like is there something deeper into that color?
That might just be my obvious preference for the color
Yeah.
green. But yeah, I
The
did.
background's out of focus, but we can see there's green. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, me and my DP basically ended up kind of like art directing the film ourselves. We got there, I think, like 2 days before we were actually filming, and we kind of like looked at the location, decided what we wanted to add in, and also we went like thrift shopping to find the costumes that we wanted to see on screen. Um, and yeah, it was like we wanted to pick kind of like warmer color palette and like decorations that felt like a little more textural, that kind of thing. So that was like more of the focus than like specific colors. But
Yeah.
yeah, it would definitely like geared towards warmth. Yeah.
So what's great about your film is that there's three arcs going on and everybody's got a journey. The mom, I thought the mom role was it could have been a one-dimensional role, but you really gave it some oomph, I guess, that's what they call it. And of course, the two leads have an arc as well. So I love that kind of concept of the film. Do you remember like the script process? Kind of like, is there a bigger story here than 10 minutes? Like, I was just curious if this is like almost like a proof of concept to a feature film, or is it just like a standalone short?
Yeah, I would love to expand this into a feature. I think there's a lot of like story to tell there. Especially, I kind of like reference like an incident that happened in the past that they witnessed that like kind of leads them into the drama that is the kind of background of the story that's happening in the current moment. So yeah, I wanted to have these characters that are maybe almost like fantasy like versions of themselves, but like still very grounded in reality. So I did want to have like characters that are accepting, but also like still kind of like having an internal struggle. Um with both of with the mom and with her partner that she speaks to at the end, I wanted to have them very much kind of like open, but also still having some resistance because I think that's like kind of a very natural thing for people. I think we've all kind of encountered that thing, especially in the queer community. So yeah, just kind of writing it was very much like, okay, I do want to create this like beautiful version of things, but also like I want to have these characters that have something to latch onto and have something based in the real world and have something that like, queer people, queer community can watch and relate to and not just have it be like oh, that would never happen. Like that's not my experience. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that there was a lot of depth to it and also more story to tell because I think with short films, it's very much just kind of you can only really focus on a moment. And if you're lucky, you can kind of resolve that moment. But short films tend to be more of like a glimpse of life rather
Yeah.
than like story. So
But like I said, you got the arc. Everybody's got a kind of a journey in this story. And you get the mom's point of view, right? Like she's doing the right thing, but you know, she's worried, right? Like about her daughter and her family, and you know what I mean? Like I get both sides of her, like, but she's still a good person, right? So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think I didn't want to be like super on the nose with it, but it is also like I think even if you are accepting, if you are an accepting parent and you're thinking about like your kid might possibly be queer, I think there's a natural fear of like what are they going to come up against?
mhm.
What does that mean for like the rest of their life? So, I wanted to like I said, I wanted to have the mom that was like this accepting character, but also,
Yeah.
very in touch with like what that would mean and what that could potentially like pose as a challenge for her daughter.
Yeah, you want your kids to be who they are, right? Not to be someone who they're not. But at the same time, you want the life to be as I think it's your instinct as a parent to want their life to be as conflict free or as easy as possible, right? So they know the conflicts that are involved and that take place, right? So I get it. You know what I mean? I think it's a very honest emotion, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. And so, but at the same time, like still, she's accepting, right? Like, so that's a good part. So tell me about the casting process. In terms of like the two leads, the mom, how did you find your actors?
Yeah, it was interesting because we're obviously kind of doing the whole pre-production remotely from Los Angeles and I I it's like an awkward way to phrase it, but it was kind of like luckily because of the pandemic, which is a very unfortunate thing,
Yeah,
but like because of that, remote casting has become like really commonplace and
yeah,
actors are extremely used to it now. So it was easy to kind of, do the casting and have people like send in their auditions with the material, but it was kind of difficult to find older Latino actors. It's very much kind of a thing where like there isn't usually like much of a casting for older Latino actors, and also like as you age, you kind of age out of acting because it's a very, kind of
Yeah.
very
And the ones
high
that who are Latino
shit.
actors, they're very successful and they're not going to do your short film, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a hard thing to make money with, like to begin with, and then if there aren't very like roles popping up for you, it's kind of like, well, I need to focus on other things, right? So it was hard to find older Latino actors, and finding finding Ximena Lisette, who plays Ximena, was actually quite a challenge. It's, again, like I think with women, especially women always have a hard time finding roles like after they're 30, and I wanted to have the mom be realistically like a mom. I didn't want to have like a young mom playing with like these teenagers kind of thing. So kind of just like held out and finally like found her, and like thankfully she's like a perfect fit, like great person to work with. But yeah, it was all very much on, we all did it all remote, had patience, went to like Facebook casting groups, New Mexico casting groups, like reaching out to everybody that we knew out there to like try and get the reach. It's kind of the whenever you want to work with like a marginalized community, you kind of have to like meet them where they are, especially if you want to like cast people from that community. So it was definitely an exercise in that, and an exercise in like trust and patience that there are actors out there that like wanted to do the role. Um, but yeah, probably the funniest thing was like getting on a Zoom call with the actors and like trying to direct them like via Zoom call and seeing if it was like a personality match between us, because it's
Yeah.
almost like, and in a way, casting almost feels like virtual dating where you're like, oh, like, do we have good chemistry here to then go on and make a film?
Gotcha. Yeah. And then you hope that when you meet them in person, they are who their personality and their looks don't change, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't have a filter on in their Zoom, I guess, or something,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess it is like virtual dating.
Yeah. It's kind of funny.
So then the two actors, the two teenage actors, did they meet before? Did they know each other before the film?
So they didn't actually meet before. They met on the day, and they both finished high school, I think, like shortly before we did the film. But so they were kind of like COVID high school kids, and I think they had both gone to the same high school but weren't aware,
Yeah.
which was kind of funny. And their actual names, Lucia's name is Claudia, and then Nicole's name was Romance. So I was very tempted to rename the film like Romance and Claudia because it's a very, like
Yeah.
beautiful pair of names. And also, it was just like a funny coincidence that they had happened to go to the same high school together there in Albuquerque, and now they're like both acting and both like on that film.
That's amazing. And so I'm assuming their parents they called their child Romance. So they might be a
Yeah,
little hippie-ish, I guess. It's an interesting name, right?
yeah, I think it's kind of like you do get kind of more almost like romantic names in Spanish, and I think that's like more of that kind of tradition because her full name is Romance Suarez, and you do get names in Spanish like Soledad, which is like
Yeah.
uh, in Concepcion and Socorro and things like that. So I think it's just kind of like carrying that tradition. But yeah, her grandpa actually like drove her to set and like picked her up. It was really sweet.
Well, it's a great name. It's a great name to be for like a movie, like a movie actress. You're not going to forget the name, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So then they just like were you worried about their chemistry or were you worried about their connection?
for sure. It's interesting because I did work with actors who are the age that they're playing on screen. So I think when we shot, they were both 18. And it's funny kind of like working with like having these kind of like professional and very like large expectations of basically like children, right? So it is like it is a challenge for sure, but they were both like really good, and it was also like Claudia is pretty much who she is on screen. So it was like easy to get her to be into that space, but it was also kind of me egging romance on and being like, "Hey, like I need you to kind of just like not necessarily like flirt like romantically, but like platonically flirt with this person, and I need the two of you to like, get a little bit more familiar." And it was really hard to do that, especially because like I said, none of us had really met before our 2 day
Yeah.
shoot. did this like on in 2 days. So it was like really trying to get that sort of chemistry in a really quick period of time to make sure that it would show on screen.
And yeah, I think you pulled it off. So,
Thank you.
and did they know what a 16 millimeter camera was? Would they know what they were shooting? I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they both did. Yeah. I never like explicitly asked, but like I did, like run down with the whole process with them of like this is going to be like a lot of rehearsals and then it's only going to be like a couple takes because, film is like expensive and that's
Yeah.
it. And they both seemed like relatively familiar with that, so I don't think it's like a too large of a surprise.
Okay, so you finished the set. So you're putting the film into processing, and then you must be nervous. Like how many days was it till you got the film footage back?
I think it was, I want to say like a week or so. We weren't like super nervous about it because both me and my DP have shot on film and my producer as well has also like produced my
Okay.
co-producer agency has also produced like other film projects. So we're kind of familiar with the process at this point. One of the things that did happen though was like there was an accidental remote start on the camera where we rolled through, I want to say like 10 minutes of film. And that was more the thing where we were like, well, maybe if we're like really lucky, we'll have some like footage from those 10 minutes of like the scenery of Albuquerque. But I
Yeah.
think it ended up just being like 10 minutes of the floor because we had
Oh
like the
no.
camera thing. So, but yeah, overall, I mean, it was pretty straightforward except for like that one hiccup.
So you just bought a can? Like did you get short ends? Like back then you get short ends and it would be cheaper, but you bought like a can of like how much
Yeah.
minutes or hours of footage did you shoot?
How I want to say it was like 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay.
I've kind of forgotten. It's been a minute. Our
Yeah.
DP would be like more familiar with
Like
that.
a
But
four
yeah.
to one ratio, I guess, like
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
pretty small, right? Like most films around like a 10 to 20, like especially because it's digital. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's pretty small. That's impressive that if it's only on a 4 to 1 ratio.
Yeah, I think on the first day we were closer to like 6 to 1, and then towards the end of the first day is when we had like our little like we rolled through 10 minutes and we are like, oh, we're down to like 2 to 1 maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then so you did the so who like did you do the edit?
Yeah, I edited it myself. I actually did have help from our DP from Garrett's brother Chase Smith. He helped out a little bit in terms of like making an assembly edit, but yeah.
Okay. So then tell me about the the sound design.
The sound design was done by Tyler Myers. He's a sound designer that I've worked with before, and it was really easy to kind of communicate with him like the direction that I was going in because he's done a couple projects with me now. So I was able to tell him like, this is more of a quiet film, but it's also like I still want to hear a lot of things. It's more in the space of like Sean Baker, like Florida Project kind of thing, like that. Like I
Gotcha.
still, yeah, like Red Rocket. So I was like, I want to have like a lot of like natural, but also still like romantic and like beautiful sounding things in the background.
Yeah, it's a good job. It's a nice job. It's like it's nuanced and it's subtle. Like it's not, but it's still original at the same time, right? So that's what I was curious about. And then you had original music. You had original music in the film.
Yeah, that's right. I had a lot of like I had a playlist of inspirations, including like Hater Lobos and like Santoya, kind of like classic like Spanish guitar. And I wanted to use that. I wanted to do like something kind of more of a departure from like your typical like film score with like violin with like heavy violins and still romantic but in a different sense. So I was looking for composers and I posted, I think there was like a Facebook group that was like specifically geared towards female composers, if I remember right.
Okay.
And I found them, posted, like my call with like here's my playlist, here's my inspirations. And music school, I think it was Guildhall in London, actually like reached out to me and was like, we have some students who would be interested in this. And that's how we found Gayazura, and Gayazura made the entire score. Like I think they recorded the whole thing themselves and did all the instrumentals and had like different recording sessions. And what they did was like really beautiful. They really fulfilled the inspirations and also found like a new original path in it.
You got the film done. It's in the festival circuit. I hope it does well for you. I think it's a great film. And what are you working on now?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping to either write this into a feature
Okay.
because I do think, like I was saying, there's more story there, or there's a couple other short films that I would also love to do. I love to like experiment. I have like a sci-fi film that's like still burning in my mind in the background, and I also have like a queer horror film that I want to do as well. So we'll just kind of see what comes next, whatever I can kind of get funding for, or whatever is, interesting me enough that it's worth taking the risk.
You want to test out the genres, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love being able to tell like intimate kind of like human heartfelt stories through like different genres. I think there's like so much room to tell those stories in really new and exciting ways.
So before we leave you, I want to ask is speaking of genres, I want to ask you the answer to the question we asked people in the blog interview what film they watched the most times in their life. And you said Kill Bill, Volume 1 and 2, which I guess would be categorized as an action film, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, that's just like the honest answer. I had a period I think when I was like 12 or 13 where I had just moved to Florida, and we for some reason we hadn't gotten like cable or internet yet, but I had my two Kill Bill DVDs. So I would come home from school and I would watch them, and I was like obsessed with seeing like Uma Thurman and Lucy Liu just kind of like on screen kicking ass. It was like the highlight of my like 12 to 13-year-old middle school days. And I don't know how much that has come through in my films. Maybe like my taste for like more pulp stories has come from there. But yeah, it's an interesting. I still look back at that film fondly. So
Female power, I guess.
yeah, true. That's very true.
So because when I remember watching that film back then, it's like I thought like it could be one film. What's he doing? Like, why does this have to be two films? It's like
Yeah.
there's a lot that could be cut, but that's just me. I don't know.
I think since I always just kind of like watched them in a pairing, I was like, yeah, this is one film to me. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of like this epic story that like spans through almost generations. So it's a really good kind of like masterclass in like telling a big story and still keeping it interesting, I think.
Yeah, like I said, it is interesting. It's just that I think that like back then, Tarantino kind of made Miramax, so I think he was allowed to do what he wanted to do, and he told the guy who's in prison now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make two parts, and he's like okay, you can do what he like. I think he had that power because it really could just be one film. So.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
But but it's like I should go back and watch it. But you actually make me want to go back and watch Walk in the Clouds because I it's 30 years old, and I remember I was on a date. I remember seeing the movie on a date one time in the theater. I haven't seen it since, so I'll love to see it now because I remember it looking really beautiful. I remember the music was really cool, and it wasn't didn't have the ending that I expected. So
Yeah.
I should check it out.
For sure. Yeah, it's cool to see watching it back and realizing that it's like Lubezki's like early work, and there's like just so much like stunning cinematography to see there.
Because it's set on the grapevine. It's like a sorry, like a wine vineyard, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's on a vineyard. It's got like the very kind of like old school like Spanish
Yeah.
architecture, like California mission style almost. Yeah, it's
And
it's just
it's a
like
Greek family, I think. Like I'm trying to remember.
they're I think they're Mexican American, like fully,
Okay.
like yeah.
Okay. So I apologize to people. I remember there's a couple Greek actors in it, so I that's what I
Yeah,
remember.
I was like, I think they're meant to be like fully like they've been in California as like Mexican Americans like the whole time, if I remember
Okay.
correctly.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna watch it then, and I'm gonna check out. I'll check out Kill Bill 1 and 2 as well because I think that yeah, all his movies are interesting to watch, right? So, but I want to see if that movie holds up as well. So,
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was like, it's maybe time for a rewatch.
yeah, because yeah, she's fantastic. I remember Uma Thurman just being fantastic in that film. Like she really kind of like pulls it off. And it's like I remember I was talking to somebody for about kung fu and like karate, where you like go to the mountains and you get the mentor, the old mentor, to teach you the ways of the sword and the ways of the karate, right? So
Oh yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. They have he has all the parts of like the kung fu movies, right? So
Yeah, he's got all the like staple moments.
yeah. All right. Well, congratulations on the film. Love to see what you do next. So don't be a stranger, and we'll talk again when you make your next film. All
Thank you. Sounds good.
right. Have a good one.